With the release of the 7000 series GPUs,
So to deliver on all these goals, the Ryzen 7000 series is the first 5nm CPU for desktop PC.
consumers looking for a Team Red GPU have an abundance of options. So, the question arises, which is the better choice? The cutting-edge Radeon RX 7900 or the previous generation's high-performance RX 6950 XT? Stay with us as we examine these amazing cards side by side in terms of specifications, performance and more. The 7900 XT features AMD's RDNA 3 architecture and is built on a TSMC 5+6nm process. It has a base clock speed of 1500 MHz and a boost clock speed of 2500 MHz. It also comes with AC4 computing units and has a memory size of 20GB GDDR6. The card also supports hardware accelerated ray tracing, which is a new technology in the gaming world that allows for more realistic lighting and shadows. The 6950 XT on the other hand is based on the RDNA 2 architecture and is built on a 7nm process. It has a lower base clock speed compared to what we see in the 7900 XT at 1925 MHz and a boost clock speed of 2324 MHz. It also has fewer 80 computing units and has a memory size of 16GB. The 6950 XT is built on the RDNA 2 architecture and therefore boasts ray tracing capabilities. It also features a media engine that can handle video decoding up to 8K resolution. Meanwhile, the RX 7900 XT with its RDNA 3 architecture promises to take ray tracing to the next level, with a 1.8 times performance boost over RDNA 2. Let's be quick to mention that the higher clock rate and memory bandwidth featured in the 7950 gives it a considerable edge in performance over the RX 6950 XT. Or does it not? We'll get around to that in a minute. Moving on, when it comes to power consumption, the 6950 XT is the more power hungry of the two cards. It has a TDP of 335 watts, whilst the 7900 XT has a TDP of 300 watts. The lesser TDP of the 7900 XT helps to keep down the running costs, despite being a more powerful card than its predecessor. Keep in mind, however, that the TDP is only part of the story. Actual power consumption will also depend on the performance of the GPU and the system as a whole, which includes the CPU, memory, and all the other components. Higher performance GPUs generally consume more power, but the increase in performance often outweighs the increase in power consumption. The 6950 is currently available for purchase for just a little over $700, whilst the 7900 XT comes in at $900. With a price increase of about 25%, the decision between both cards ultimately comes down to a trade-off between the performance per dollar. On one hand, the RX 7900 XT boasts impressive specifications and improvements with its RDNA 3 architecture and the focus on energy efficiency, making it a strong contender. On the other hand, the 6950 XT still offers decent performance at a more affordable price point. Now that we've looked at the specifications and power rating of both GPUs, let's delve into the benchmarks of these high performance cards to see how they perform in popular games. So, to test the performance difference of the 7950 XT and the 6950 XT, we're going to be examining how they play at different resolutions using several games. First, let's take a look at the performance in 1080p high presets. Starting with 1080p, in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, the 7900 XT had an average frame rate of 295 FPS, whilst the 6950 XT had an average frame rate of 257. This is a distinct 14.8% performance improvement over the 6950 XT. This performance gap only gets more pronounced in The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, as the 7950 XT achieves frame rates of 483 FPS, compared to the 376 FPS we see in the competitor. Moving on to Metro Exodus, the 7900 XT fell a bit behind, with an average frame rate of 146 frames, whilst the 6950 XT had an average frame rate of 189, a staggering 29.5% performance difference. In Far Cry 5, the 7900 XT bounces back, taking the lead again with a performance difference of about 8% at 187 FPS, compared to the 173 FPS achieved by the 6950 XT. Also, in Watch Dogs Legion, the 7900 XT had an average frame rate of about 120 FPS, which is just a little bit higher than the 115 frames the 6950 XT managed. Cyberpunk 2077 was the deal breaker between these GPUs. The 7900 beats the other hands down with an amazing 48.4% performance improvement at 190 frames, when the 6950 held up at 128 frames. Next up, let's take a look at how these cards fared in 1440p resolution when set to ultra quality. Assassin's Creed Valhalla was not favourable for the 7900 XT, as it came in with frame rates of 85, whilst the 6950 XT had an average frame rate of 90, an easy 2.4% performance gain. Again, in Battlefield 5, the 7900 attained 140 frames, which is 1.4% lower than the 150 frames obtained with the 6950. The 7900 XT, however, made an astonishing comeback, with the 122 frames it gave in Cyberpunk, whilst its counterpart managed 93 frames. There's also Far Cry New Dawn, where AMD's new card beats its predecessor with a performance difference of 6.8% at 141 frames and 138 frames respectively. In Forza Horizon 4, the 6950 XT held the 7900 in check, surpassing it with 10 frames at 180 frames per second and 170 frames per second respectively. But this difference is nothing compared to the staggering difference we see in Watch Dogs Legion, where the 6950 XT raced far ahead of the 7900 XT, with a difference of approximately 40% at respective frame rates of 103 and 80 frames per second. Finally, let's take a look at the performance in the 4K Ultra preset. In Valhalla, both GPUs fluctuated around 55 and 60 frames, but the 6950 XT still showed a performance improvement of around 1.8% over its successor. Also in Battlefield 5, we see the 7950 falling behind again at frame rates of around 98 frames, and the 6950 XT managing a frame rate of 103 FPS. Next, the 7900 XT picked up in Far Cry 5 and Far Cry New Dawn, with frame rates of 132 frames and 129 frames respectively, whilst the 6950 XT came in at 124 frames and 118 frames respectively. This means that the 7900 XT provided an individual 6.5% and 9.3% performance improvement over the competitor in both games. In Cyberpunk, the 6950 XT managed a weak 46 FPS, compared to the 60 FPS obtained by the 7900 XT, an improvement in performance of over 30%. The 6950 XT, however, matched the battle in Watch Dogs Legion, as it achieved frame rates of 65 frames, an improvement of about 43% of what we see in the 7900 XT, which came in at an average frame rate of 48 frames per second. In exception of the 3 to 4 games where the performance differences between both cards were especially large, we would observe that there isn't really much gain in frame rates. In fact, a chart released by AMD quite recently shows how the current and previous generation GPUs lineups differ. The comparison chart reveals that although the 7900 XT performs faster than the 6950 XT, the difference is not substantial. But let's not forget that the 7900 XT is considered a better value GPU compared to the 4070 Ti. But here, the 6950 XT's performance is almost as good as what we see for the 7900 XT. At 4K resolution, the 7900 only offers an overall 7% increase in performance. In fact, the gap only becomes smaller at 1080p. According to the chart, the 7900 XT is just about 5% faster than the 6950 XT. This clearly insinuates a near 5% higher performance at nearly 29% higher price. At the end of the day, despite advancements in GPU power with the RDNA 3 architecture, the RX 6950 XT still remains a formidable competitor. Our comparison of the specs of the second RDNA 3 flagship GPU, the 7900 XT, reveal that both cards exhibit similar characteristics, despite a difference in transistors. This highlights the durability and competitiveness of the 6950, even against newer technology. While the final decision of which card to go for depends on what you want, and of course your budget, the 6950 XT seems like a more attractive option for those seeking a cost-effective GPU, given its lower price. But what do you guys think of these two high-end graphics cards? Do you see yourself buying either of them anytime soon? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. And now that that's said, we've come to the end of our video for today. Thank you all so much for watching. Also, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel. We're always posting educational content and we'd love you to be a part of the family. Have a nice day.